What was your inspiration for writing Somewhere in the City?
You know, like every author, I have my moments where I have inspiration coming out and I'm sitting there typing and writing. And then sometimes they're just staying. You look at this blank page and you're like, I have no clue what I'm going to write. And so one of those days happened and I decided to distract myself. And so I checked my emails and my niece, Annie, she would put on a Facebook submission every day. I mean, there was always something from Annie. And this particular post was somewhere in the city, a little girl should be sleeping when she's singing. And I just loved that image. And I immediately wrote down somewhere in the city. And part of that reminded me of my dad. When I was younger, my dad would go to work every day in a suit and a tie. I would shine his shoes on a Saturday to make sure they were ready for Monday. And I never knew what going downtown meant or what it looked like. And at the end of the day, about 5 o'clock or so, my mother would say to us kids, go run down to the street, at the end of the street where the bus stop is, and go meet your dad. And so we'd all run down to meet him. And he would sometimes be just getting off the bus, or he'd be walking and he had his jacket off and his tie. He had a long day of work, but he was always happy to see us. I just never imagined, I couldn't imagine what he normally went to, but I can imagine what my child's mind would have made up to sort of figure out what my dad did for a living. And I think the whimsicalness of that, of the illustrations kind of was something I bet you I probably would have thought of at my age, something whimsical and crazy and fun.
So how long did the whole process, like from getting the idea to the book being on the shelves?
So I started to write Somewhere in the City. We could probably figure out the exact date by going back to Annie's Facebook post, but I wrote that book within a year. And you know, you let it sit and then you pick it up and you let it sit, and I've changed formats and stuff. And then I spent about almost 2 years trying to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't, everyone was always saying, well, where's the mother? You know, why does it have to be the city? And I really wanted to pay an homage to my dad. So I didn't want to change it. This was my experience. I couldn't change it anyway. And so I kept researching it, you know, who would be a good publisher to have, you know, just don't send it out. You have to really find the right publisher that can appreciate it. And Familia's popped up because they focus on family, 100%. And now that sounds funny, but it's like, oh, what do you mean family? You know, but I thought that Somewhere in the City might strike a chord with them. Mm-hmm. And it did. In fact, they bought Somewhere in the City first, and then I sent them Count on Me 1, 2, 3, and they said yes to that the second. So once they agreed, then I started to work with their editor. And yeah, I know everybody thinks, oh, when you send in a manuscript, it's supposed to be perfect, but it really isn't. It's not perfect. They assign you an editor. And so then she gives you her feedback and all the things that she might want to change. And she did want to change a few things. And I agreed with her on some. I didn't have to take it 100%. And everything that I did, every change that I made was really, it enhanced the book. So it's worth, my ego had to be like, hey, you know, you're not the end all be all here. Let's listen to somebody else. They may have something to say. And so I'm glad I did that because I think it helped. And then they were very keen on getting Yuling. And so they were waiting. It took about a month before they finally got her in. And she had, I think, I'm not sure about her length of time. I've kind of lost track, maybe 4 or 5 months to do the illustrations. And then COVID hit. And so the book was supposed to come out in 2020, but because of COVID, we didn't do anything. And so maybe, I think maybe a year and a half to get it out, really. So it was, after waiting for so long, I could wait a year and a half.
Was that waiting game at the end after all the work had already been done, but you were just waiting for publication? Was that the hardest part? Like that kind of impatient, let's see it on the shelf thing, or were you just
Oh,
happy to go through it all?
I was happy to go through it all, but I'm really looking to see it in the hands and to go to schools and be able to read it to the kids. That is what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, that's the exciting,
Yeah.
fun part. So do you have any other projects in the works that you can tell us about, or kind of ideas that you've got in mind?
I do. I have one that is about hand-me-down clothes. As you can imagine, from a family of 14, you always have hand-me-downs. And so I have my sister Mary and my sister Catherine, who are my two older sisters, used to give me their hand-me-downs. So I've written a story about that, and that's my next project, among other things.
That'll be fun. Is what do you feel like is the most valuable thing you've learned through this whole process?
Um, I discovered that if you believe, I've learned many different things. One of which was, if you really believe in your idea, if you have your heart and soul into it, and stay at it, you're going to make it come true. I didn't start out my career to be a writer. I wanted to be one. It's always been the back of my mind. I always was learning how to be a better writer. And so this whole process kept reminding me that if you believe in something, it's going to take all of your energy and your belief in yourself to keep moving forward. And it ultimately will happen. It will happen if you believe in it. And that's one of the strongest lessons that I've ever learned, despite what anybody would say, or, if they gave me encouragement or they didn't give me encouragement, it was all on me. It all had to be on me and how I felt about it. And so you got to stick to it.
Mhm. I did have someone ask earlier how they found the illustrators. Do you know anything about how Familia gets their illustrators?
I'm not sure, and I would have liked to have asked that actually, if what they were keen on about her. Because when I saw her art, I just loved it. I just thought it had the right tone and the right attitude for somewhere in the city. And I think because they're in the game, they've been looking at illustrators, they know what they have in mind, their picture in their mind.
Mhm.
So they really do. Christopher Robbins has a real strong, it seems, and his team have a real strong sense of what they want it to look like, their sales team, what they want to look like, what would be a good name. Like they really know their stuff, and they work very, very hard. Kate Farrell, who was working on marketing, and they're constantly encouraging you, helping you, giving you ideas, and then looking to better everything. They're just Familia is a wonderful publisher.
Yeah, they do a great job. And were you able to give feedback at all while the illustrations were being made? Was there anything that you wanted changed or anything like that?
There were some things that I was saying, and Familia's listened to me, which was wonderful. Every comment that I made, they considered it, and whether it worked or not, they didn't just dismiss it out of hand, which was really nice. But there was things that I kind of insisted on and tried to show she must have misunderstood this, because that's not what this means. And so they went back to her and she understood it then. So, there's funny, because you don't think about it. You don't think there's a cultural gap, but there with something is somewhere in the city, there is, because it's a personal story, or a little more close to the body. But as you had expressed, it was something that she could relate to.
Mhm.
And so we just had to make those cultural differences and help her bridge them. That's all.
Mhm.
And she did, very few. It
Mhm.
was wonderful.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it seems like every author who writes a picture book, they're sort of translating what's on the page to translating it to picture. But in this case, you also had to translate a lot across cultural differences. So it would have been kind of a unique experience.
She did that graphic idea, and that was something I had in my head for some reason too.
Mhm.
I wanted to have a graphic-y look, because you don't want to, it doesn't age it in some ways.
Mhm.
It kind of makes it timeless in a way. And I didn't say anything to her. She just came up with that. So
Mhm.
it must have been inherent in the story.